If you work for an organization or run an organization that has to deal with environmental nonprofits or environmental protection or marine science or marine conservation or wildlife science or wildlife conservation, this is the episode for you. The reason why is because we're going to talk about how to get your message out to many people all in one shot. We're going to talk about that on this episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. Let's start the show. Hey everybody, welcome back to another exciting episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. I am your host, Andrew Lewin, and this is the podcast where you find out what's happening with the ocean, how you can speak up for the ocean, and what you can do to live for a better ocean by taking action. And today we're going to be talking about communication and action. So speaking up for the blue and also taking action for the blue. And if you work in a career or run an organization or work in marine science and conservation or any kind of wildlife science and conservation, this episode's for you. Because we're going to be talking about podcasting. We're going to talk about the importance of podcasting, the importance of getting your voice out or your organization's voice out or the voices of your organizations out to the public and why that is so important. This is one of the most underappreciated modes of communication in digital form, in my opinion, right? This is a way that you can connect with people with one voice or many voices over and over and over again for a very long time. Now, one of the things that I always love is, every time you see a new platform pop up, there's a huge flux of people going in. This is what we need to be focused on. We need to be focused on this. So, for example, Threads. Threads is the Twitter version of Instagram. And it's a very text-based. You can share pictures and share like links to videos and so forth. And they're building out the platform. And I think you can share your own videos. I'm not sure yet. I haven't really played around too much with it. But it's the newest platform that Instagram or Meta has put out. So if you have an Instagram account, you can go to Threads and you can start your own account. Very easy to do so. A lot of your followers will come over and you will automatically follow them once they join Threads and vice versa. So you can already get your following from Instagram, but just more in a text-based format, updating quickly, not having to worry about putting on a picture every time you want to post something. And so it's just more of the on the run. This is my, 2 minutes of I need to share something with you or share an article or what have you. And so everybody went in, and when everybody went on it, they were all like, I think back in July when it first started, there were over 50 million users that were there. Now it's down to 10 million active users. And so even though it's a lot of people, it's not as much as I think they anticipated. And so, it's this flashy, hey, here's a new platform you should check out and you should put all of your effort on that and take away from all the other platforms. And I find that's happened to podcasting a little bit. Video's been out for a while. Podcasting has been out since 2006. People have been able to podcast for a long time. And it's had its advantages. Over the years, it's kind of had its ups and downs. In 2006, it kind of shot up for a bit. New platform, new way of communicating, audio only. There was a video that was released quite soon after that, but not a lot of people picked up on the video podcasting aspect. It was difficult and a lot of work to put up a video podcast, in my opinion. And I just think that people just didn't want to do that when they had, YouTube at the same time. It was easier to put on some type of video on that platform. But audio podcasting went up, and then it went down around 2009 to 2010, and then it started to have a little bit of a renaissance in 2012, and then it just really shot up from there. 2015 is when I first published How to Speak Up for Blue, which is now How to Protect the Ocean, and that's just increased from there. And now it seems for a while, especially during the pandemic, podcasting really grew. We weren't sure what was going to happen in the pandemic, but podcasting just went insane. That we saw an influx of marine science and conservation podcasts, which was wonderful. I continued to podcast through that time. A lot of other people continued to podcast through that time. People were going on more walks so they can listen to those shows in their earbuds and not have to worry about watching anything. They want to get outside because they were locked down, all that kind of stuff, right? And then it's kind of there's a bit of a leveling off and maybe a little bit of a decrease now that people are out and doing more things and able to socialize after COVID and so forth, but it's starting to pick back up again. But still, people are coming out with podcasts. Businesses are coming out with podcasts. Yet the nonprofit organization side a lot of them tried to do a podcast, but they never remained consistent. They never were able to get to that point where they were just publishing, once a week or once a month or twice a month or, a couple times a quarter. And I feel like they're missing out on an opportunity. Like I said, if you own and run a nonprofit organization, conservation organization, or you work for a conservation organization, there are a lot of benefits to running a podcast and to hosting a podcast. And I think, the big reason is it's difficult. It's a lot of work. And a lot of the people's communication teams, a lot of these organization communication teams are quite small, and they just don't have the capacity to do this. However, there are so many benefits to doing a podcast on a regular, consistent basis. Here are some of the reasons why your organization should have a podcast on conservation. The first thing, people are listening to podcasts. It doesn't matter if you're doing a video podcast or an audio podcast. In my opinion, you should be doing both. You can film in audio. You can rip the audio, you can film in video with video. You can take the audio from the video, put it into an audio format, and then publish that audio format. Most of the content is conversation focused anyway. And when you go on an audio platform, you're pushing it to multiple podcast apps. Everybody has their own favorite podcast application. Mine is Apple because that's what I first learned on. So a lot of the stuff is on there. Some people like Overcast. Some people like Spotify. It really is all about personal preference. But a lot of the good hosts like Liberated Syndication, Buzzsprout, Blueberry, all these hosts push to multiple podcast apps. So in one push of the button, all these apps are being updated with your newest episode. So it's easy. More people are listening to podcasts every day. They know what podcasts are. Even just like 2-3 years ago, not a lot of people knew what podcasts were. Now, many people know what podcasts are. You see TV shows are surrounding it. You see YouTubers are all doing podcasts now and being very successful on it. Even celebrities during this strike, during the SAG strike, I just saw a podcast start with the 5 hosts of late night TV. It was quite impressive. And even, who is it? Conan O'Brien, late night TV host who retired from late night TV and now has a successful podcast where I think he may even do it every day. I'm not sure what his frequency is, but he is all in on radio and podcasting. So a lot of people are doing it. A lot of people are listening to it. More and more people every day are discovering what podcasts are, and they're starting to listen to podcasts. So more people are listening, which is why you need to be on there. Now, with an audio podcast compared to like video, right? Even just regular videos, like YouTube videos, the average listening time was 3 to 5 minutes. That's the average listening time and watch time of a podcast. On the other hand, the audio podcasts, the average listening time was about 30 minutes, 20 to 30 minutes, and sometimes even longer. So you can pack in a ton of information from an audio podcast, which makes it perfect for long form interviews. It makes it perfect for going through narrative podcasts where it's highly produced, where you're actually telling a story and having different voices in it. You have time to develop the story. You have time to dive in on an interview and get to know who that guest is and what you're interviewing them for, like the topic that you brought them on. You have time to develop that story, and you have time for your audience to fall in love with the guest or hate the guest, depending on the type of podcast that you have. But for my podcast, what I love about doing like a 30 to 45 minute interview, even sometimes longer, is the fact that I can dive into a bit of their career and who they are and why they want to be in marine science and conservation, and then the project that they're working on of why we're actually here to discuss it. right? It kind of gives you the background of their passion and what they're doing in this field. And so you have that chance to really develop that story. So I think that is the second reason why you should start a podcast, is because people listen to it longer and they want to be educated. They want to learn stuff. And so you have that ability to do that in that time span, right? Third reason is people are very loyal to their podcasts that they listen to. From personal experience, I have people who listen to each and every podcast that they do. And I put out 3 times a week. That's a lot to take in. I try and create content so that people can listen to it in a fairly easy and quick sort of commuting type of time and length. But sometimes I just go all in. But people will be loyal, and so they listen to it over and over again. They become fans of the podcast. They really become fans of the business or the organization that are doing the podcast. And I think that's a big thing. I think that's something that, you should really focus on that, because if you have an organization, a nonprofit organization that's dealing in conservation, you want to be able to bring people in. You want to be able to have people get updated on what you're doing, and so they build that loyalty to that podcast. I think having that would be really great. Okay. The fourth reason is you should be showing off your staff. If you're a nonprofit organization that have hired people to help you do the work and accomplish your goals, there are projects on there and the people that are on there that people need to know about. Your audience needs to know about. Now, I know a lot of the times, organizations put out emails, but not everybody gets a lot of detail out of emails. With a longer podcast, a longer form podcast, an interview type podcast, you are able to talk to your staff and show off your staff. Whether they come back multiple times or they come back just once, or they're on there just once, it doesn't matter, right? You're getting their voice, you hear their passion, you hear why they're excited about this, you talk about the successes, the challenges of the project, and you get to dive in on who that person is. People can have their favorites, people can be like, oh, yeah, Sally Joe is on the podcast today talking about her project on dolphin conservation, and I want to know more about it. She's going to give me an update on the project that she came in the last quarter or a couple of months ago and talked about, and we were waiting to hear some results, and so I want to hear it. Especially if you're someone who's considering donating to the organization as an audience member, you want to hear multiple updates on projects, and you can do that with a podcast. You can put out any type of content, right? You can also, the fifth reason, you can also repurpose content. You could repurpose content from webinars. You can repurpose content from public meetings. You can repurpose content from, internal meetings. It's up to you. You can make it as long as you want. You can make it as short as you want. You can update it frequently, once a week. You can have it twice a week. You can have it 3 times a week, or just once a month. It's up to you to be able to do that, but you're able to put all that content up there. And once you start to realize how much content you have, oh man, you're never going to run out of ideas. And I just think that's the greatest part of it. A lot of organizations have so many great people and so many great projects that they're running, the programs that they're running, and just to update people on those projects, coming out with new reports, new updates on programs, and new funding coming in. It makes it exciting. It gives the person who's listening and wanting to support the organization that extra insight. But it's more personal. You're in their earbuds, right? They're excited to hear about it. And I don't see organizations really doing this. I don't see organizations putting that stuff out, talking about workshops or conferences that I just went to. Your donors or potential donors, your audience needs information from you. If they're donating and they're sponsors or whatever whatever you call them, they're going to want to get updates on a regular, not just from an email, but like personal updates, like somebody talking to you. That just, it adds to that intimacy with the organization you're working with instead of just a text saying or an email saying, hey, if you support us on this project, we're going to be able to do this. Well, where's the update? What have you been able to do? I want to hear from the person who's working on the project, not just a letter from the CEO or a letter from the executive director. I want to hear people talk about it. Now, this is all great, right? Everybody knows, a lot of people know this, the benefits of a podcast. A lot of people think that, hey, you know what? This is, actually, before we go into that, one more reason is that some organizations don't get the right press. If you're an activism organization and, you are doing protests around the world or even around your country, and, or you're on the media, but you're not getting a good name. A lot of people are talking about you, but they don't really know what you do. They don't know how effective your activism is. And we just talked to Just Stop Oil, just the episode before this. And, they get to talk about a lot of their stuff, but people don't get to hear the reasoning all the time unless you're at the protest, right? You don't get to hear from the people in the organization. You don't get to see who's involved in the organization. Right? What type of people are involved in the organization? Why are they involved? What are they doing? What are they hoping to accomplish? And how well are they accomplishing that? A podcast is the perfect medium to do that because you can interrupt, you can listen to them, and people are curious about organizations like Just Stop Oil, right? People are curious about your nonprofit organization. And so to be able to have a podcast where you can access people one-to-many, so you don't have to have individual conversations. It's almost like a protest. It's almost like, this technical report that you can put out, a report that you can put out, but it's live. People can hear it, and it's evergreen. People can always go back to it. There are so many times I have downloads of my back catalog that it's tough to tell how many are getting new. And thank God my host at Lipson tells me, which episodes are being downloaded the most, because people go to my back catalog all the time. I have over 1,500 episodes and people are looking at it all the time. So having, that ability to get your word out, without anybody interrupting, be able to determine your own your own reputation is critical to an organization. So you have all these great ideas and great reasons to put out a podcast. As an organization, what is stopping you? I'll tell you what is normally stopping you. It's the capacity. Do you have the capacity? Do you have the people? Do you have the resources to dedicate towards putting out a consistent podcast? Even the biggest organizations don't have the capacity. It's a tough thing to get. It's not necessarily to a point where you want to hire someone full-time to do the podcast. Not every organization is ready to do that, whether it be an audio podcast or a video podcast. It's a very difficult thing to do when you're looking at, dedicating that amount of money towards that resource, right? So I have a solution for you. You can hire me. I am in the business of getting your podcast up and running, whether you want to have your own host or you want to have me as a host or we can find a host. I am here to get your podcast not only up and running, but done consistently, to suggest interviews on programs, on projects, to be able to work with the people to do that interview, to edit that interview, right? To take out the clips for your social media team, to be able to upload it and press it to all the different podcast apps, to put it on YouTube if you're doing video and editing that YouTube video, right? To be able to get that information out to your audience is so important. I'm not only willing to do it, I am very happy to do it. It's the business I'm going in. I want to help your organization. So if you're looking for help within your organization, or you know someone at an organization that wants that help but doesn't have the capacity and is looking to do that, I am here to help out. Just give me a holler at the email in the show notes, and I'd be more than happy to help. Or you can DM me on Instagram at How to Protect the Ocean. That's at How to Protect the Ocean. I am excited to talk and discuss it with your organization. Excited to be able to build that capacity or provide that capacity for you in your organization to get that message out, to make sure that audience members, your donors, your constituents are excited to get information from you straight from your mouth, straight from the organization's mouth, talking to staff, showing off your staff, showing off your projects, your results, your successes, your challenges, and potentially bringing in more revenue through donations. That's what I'm here to do. I'm here to help you build and spread the word of your organization. So if you want to contact me, please do at howtoprotecttheocean, or you can email me, andrew@speakupforblue.com. That's andrew@speakupforblue.com. And I want to thank you so much for listening to this episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Lewin. I hope your organization strongly considers getting a podcast, whether you use me or not, or launching a podcast. It's really, really important for your business, for your organization, and for science and conservation all around. But have a great day. We'll talk to you next time, and happy conservation.